Good evening, everybody. I've decided to do a live broadcast this evening on Christmas Day to talk about a magnificent event that takes place in a temple in the Fayoum area of Egypt. I got this morning some photographs sent to me by Patricia Aouyan, with whom I'll be doing a tour in Egypt in April. And these photographs showed how people were getting together at sunrise, just before sunrise, at this specific temple to watch the sun shine in down the corridor and light up the Holy of Holies right at the end of the corridor. Now, you can see here these photographs. This is right in the heart of the temple, where the sunbeam shines right through at sunrise and goes right into the end of the temple here. This is at winter solstice. There are some more photographs of this. And this is taken a little from the outside. You can see how the sunlight shines around each door. You can see how it's perfectly aligned and coming in perfectly aligned like this, right into the heart of the temple. This is a present day thing, okay? So this is happening, this was happening yesterday for winter solstice. Now, I wanted to talk about this observation, the fact that people get together to watch this observation of sunrise at winter solstice in this temple, because I was very touched by the fact that it's still happening in Egypt today. So here we have a picture of the whole of Egypt with the Nile Delta, and we can see the area with the Fayoum lake and the agricultural part there with the land and the farming which goes down into the Nile. And if we zoom into this particular point, we're going to see that this temple is in a bit of a desert area here, and there's land around it. You can see farming land around it and people living around it. But it's perfectly flat land. There is absolutely, when you're in front of the temple, there is absolutely, there are no hills. The first land goes up slightly to a height of 5 meters, over 5 kilometers away. So it's a perfect spot for observing sunrise, and of course there are no trees in this area, so it's really a good spot. And what's astounding is that this solstice angle is the angle of a double square. So I'll be looking into this now. This is the case in Karnak in the south of Egypt, and it's very important to realize that what we're going to see is that the ancient traditions have been continued from the period of the temple in Karnak, which is around 1350 BC, all the way down to this temple, which was built at about, they say, between 100 to 200 BC during the Greek occupation in the area. So this is a very important fact. The solstice angle has changed over time, and we can see that Karnak in Egypt is much further south. You can see it here, the bend in the river there where you have Karnak-Luxor temple. And so now the temple in Fayoum is much further north, and this is very interesting because it's linked to the change in the Earth's obliquity. with the change in the tilt of the Earth's axis, the latitude of winter solstice at a given angle will move north. So at the Karnak temple, what I've shown is that the solstice angle was exactly a double square placed on cardinal directions. And so when the temple was built, the sun would come in exactly along the line. It still comes in. It hasn't moved all that much, just a slight amount. But I decided to work out what it would be for the Qasr Qaroun temple in 200 BC. So if we look at this, we can see that the year I've put here is 100 BC, and I've put in the latitude, the exact latitude of the temple. And what we can see here at the base is the angle. It says 116.89 degrees. Now the exact angle of the double square is 116.56 degrees, so we're about 0.4 degrees away from the angle of a double square. Now this could indicate that there's a continuity in the information, and that the fact that because of the Earth's tilt, things had moved north, and so now a temple was built to stay in line with that angle. Now, what's strange is that when it was actually built, the angle was slightly too great for the winter solstice, but it's now perfect, so that if you go there now, you get the winter solstice going straight in there, which is rather interesting. And so I thought I would look at the geometry involved here. And this is a very important thing to look at. So the first thing you can see, I've got the temple here, and I've got north. This is Google Earth, and we have the north here on Google Earth in the corner. And I've put a rectangle going through that north so that we can see exactly the cardinal directions, north, south, and east, west. And you see the east-west line here, which goes exactly through the diagonal of the temple. So we can see that the diagonal, you see we're in the corner here, and if we look carefully it goes through the other corner. Now there are bits added on here to the main structure on both sides of the entrance, but if we take the main central structure, we'll see that that is exactly the diagonal of the main central structure of the temple. So that is east-west orientated. Now what does that mean? That means that to get the solstice angle, then the temple has to be a double square, and this is what we'll find. I've now added on in red. These are two squares placed side by side, and we can see here that this exactly fits the shape of the temple. So if east-west is on the diagonal of the temple, then the axis of the temple, which is oriented and which is a double square, this will be orientated towards winter solstice sunrise. So that's the incredible thing. It's the principle that was used in the Karnak temple in the south of Egypt has been reproduced here. Now we can see that there's an inner temple here. So we have the outer entrance, and then we have a smaller part. You see there's a kind of entrance, and what I've found is that this is a relationship of 2 to 3. Okay, so the length here is 1.5 times the width, and so these are 3 units. The inner temple is 3 units long for 4 units long for the whole of the temple. Okay, so there's clear modular geometry going on here with relationship to the cardinal directions. I'll remind you that 2 and 3, this is a 2 by 3 rectangle. For those of you who know my work, 2 by 3, 2 to 3 are 2 numbers from the Fibonacci series, and so they're linked to the golden ratio. Now, it's possible to see that the whole of the temple is included if I draw a 4 by 5 rectangle around the whole of the temple structure. Then you can see how the temple fits into that. So you have the long wall of the temple here, which fits into 2 by 4 modules, which is the double square. This is cardinal directions, okay, 2 by 4. Then this is a right angle, so that's a double square from north. And then again, 2 by 4 down to this corner. And then a double square, 1 by 2, for the entrance. So the whole thing fits in 20 modules, okay, which are 4 by 5 modules. Now, the question, which is interesting, what are the dimensions? So we see that it's orientated to winter solstice. It's using modular geometry. The double square, very important. Now, I've looked into the measurements here. So if we look at the diagonal, so the measurements I've got here are from Google Earth, okay? So they would have to be perfectly checked on site, but I've already checked up on Google Earth and its measurements. I've done quite a lot of experiments to check up whether Google Earth is very accurate, and I've come to the very definite conclusion that Google Earth is very accurate if you can clearly see the building. Okay, now you can see on this picture that the base of the building is slightly offset to the top. This is because when the satellite photo was taken, it wasn't perfectly above the building. So the geometry I'm doing here is done at the top of the building, okay, which is important. Now the diagonal at the top of the building, I got a measurement of 41.89 meters along this east-west line here, from one corner to the other, from one extremity here to the other, 41.89 meters, which turns out to be 80 Royal Egyptian cubits. This is the Royal Egyptian cubit as found in the Great Pyramid of 0.5236 meters, which is, I think, is 2.72 feet. No. Can't remember what it is in feet. 0.5236 meters. Okay. And so it's a whole number, 80 Royal Egyptian cubits give the diagonal on the east-west line. Okay. Which means that each square here, because there are 5 squares, then 80 divided by 5 gives us 16. So each square is 16 Royal Egyptian cubits. Now, the width of the temple here is linked to the square root of 5. So we have to divide, because it's a double square, we have to divide the diagonal by the square root of 5 to get the width of the temple. And I discovered this can be expressed in whole numbers of Royal Egyptian cubits. 161 multiplied by 2/9 Royal Egyptian cubits. That's the width of it, which could be seen to be 35.777 Royal Egyptian cubits, or 18.733 meters. Okay. But what's interesting again is that the width is on a whole number basis, 161, which is close to 1618 again, which is the golden ratio. So So 161 multiplied by 2/9, and you'll see these are exact figures. Again, I repeat, it's with a Royal Egyptian cubit, which measures 0.5236 meters. So the length of the temple will be twice that, so 161 times 4/9, which gives 71.555 Royal Egyptian cubits, or 37.466 meters in length. The inner temple then will be 3 times that length, because we have 3 units instead of 4 for the inner temple, which will give us 53.666 Royal Egyptian cubits, or 28.1 meters. So this temple seems to have been built in the same Royal Egyptian cubits as the ones found in the upper chamber of the Great Pyramid, and around the base 440 Royal Egyptian cubits of 0.5236 meters make up the base of the Great Pyramid. And so this temple would definitely seem to be continuing ancient principles, ancient measurements. And that's why I found it extremely touching to see that it's still visited today. This year was the 11th year that this winter solstice was celebrated by the area. The governancy of Fayoum actually organized a celebration for the winter solstice in this temple. So there were many officials there and also tourists. And I find that very touching to see how the winter solstice can be perfectly seen to go right into this inner temple in the same way as what we find in the megalithic monuments like Newgrange in Ireland or Gavrinis in Brittany. And it's a very ancient tradition which is carried on over the millennia through different cultural architecture. Right, well, thank you for listening, and I'll be doing another talk shortly on a totally different subject. Right, bye-bye.